Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the front page of the Times today, which carries the headline, Sunak aims to divide and rule after polls setback. Sounds like a new strategy, doesn't it? It's not. Sounds like he's at least adopting a strategy which will work, doesn't it? It won't. What seems to be happening is that Sunak is presenting his existing and badly failing strategy as new. So let's go over why it's neither new nor effective. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So in what would appear to be an ill-advised move, Rishi Sunak is siding with Lee Anderson on his choice of strategy. What could go wrong? The Times article begins, Rishi Sunak is preparing to launch a more aggressive political campaign in an attempt to shift Labour's lead in the polls with divisive policies on crime, migrant votes and transgender rights. What Sunak is aiming to do here sounds utterly ridiculous on the face of it. He's seeking to target voters who, if they are prepared to use their general election vote on these matters, would not vote Labour in large numbers anyway. But let's do a bit of a proof by contradiction, which is a mathematical device whereby you assume that the concept is not absolutely insane and then try to apply it. So, first of all, let's go over the three types of voter which Sunak might be trying to attract here. The first would be those on the sort of upper left-hand quadrant of the political compass, those who are economically left-wing but quite authoritarian. These are the groups who traditionally voted Labour quite consistently for many years because at the end of the day, economics comes first if they want a roof over their heads and food on the table. But these were also the sorts of voters who were persuaded to vote Tory in 2019 because Boris Johnson promised it all. He was going to be cruel to other people and make them richer. However, as the Tories didn't actually pursue their levelling up programme, and Rishi Sunak is at the moment actually arguing that people's pay should be kept below the level of inflation, and he doesn't have the personality to pretend he's one of the ordinary folk, for any of these voters who have switched back to Labour now, I don't think there's much evidence that Sunak can flip them back to the Tories. Second group of voters would be those currently minded to vote for Reform UK. But Reform UK are only taking so many votes. As these by-elections have shown again, the online polls are flattering Reform UK's level of support. Now, don't get me wrong, they are going to cost the Tories seats in marginal constituencies. Come the election, there will be seats decided by a few thousand or even a few hundred votes in some cases. Reform UK can absolutely make the difference in some of these seats. But the Tories will not find it easy to get those votes back. The bottom line is, it doesn't matter what policies they push for the Reform UK voters, they're not working. And it's worth considering the intellectual calibre of some of the Reform UK supporters. I say some, so if there are any intelligent racists out there, stop complaining, I'm not talking about you. See, there are quite a few who seem to believe the most insane things. Like, you know the guy in the BBC Question Time audience who reckons he saw an illegal immigrant coming into the country and then straight into the benefits office? Like, how thick do you have to be to believe that? But some do. There are people who believe the Daily Mail stories that the government are handing over more cash to refugees than they are UK citizens on benefits. And you try to ask these people, well, how does that make sense then? Like, from the government's point of view, what do they gain by doing that then? What's in it for them? They used to tell you, oh, it's not actually the government, it's the EU making them do it. But now they just ignore you because they can't say that anymore. But they keep believing it. And as the government is currently Sunak's government, that means there are loads of these voters around the country who believe that Rishi Sunak is stood at the border personally handing over a pot of gold to everyone who comes into the country asking for asylum. Oh, you're seeking asylum? Here's your pot of gold. Would you like someone to carry it for you? Even these barges, they're prison ships, which the government have spent a load of our money on, these Reform UK supporters think they're all having a holiday. Oh, it's a cruise ship. They're all having a holiday. It's all five-star luxury with fully funded excursions to all the sites Britain has to offer. How is Sunak going to win these people back? No matter how he changes his rhetoric, the bottom line is that Reform UK will keep pointing out how Sunak is falling. How his pledges are falling over, like they stop the boats. Well, he's not stopping the boats, is he? Or the immigration figures, like even when they appear to go down next year, which they will, they'll still be too high for these people. So surely the only Reform UK supporters he can win are those who will vote pragmatically for the Tories to stop Labour. The ones who realise that actually Reform UK are not actually going to win the seat. So it's really between the Tories and Labour. So pragmatic voters. But the thing is, Sunak's rhetoric is already pro-cruelty to others. So surely they would already do that. He doesn't have to change anything to get them to do that. Then the third group would be like the sleeping Tory voters. So these are hidden amongst the don't knows. So the current polling only reflects the views of those who are both considered likely to vote by the pollster and those who say how they would vote. But there will be lots of people who are saying don't know at the moment. They're likely to vote. They traditionally do vote. But at the moment they're going, well, I don't know who I would vote for. Many of these people will actually be Tory voters. Come the election, some of them will hold their nose and vote Tory. But some of them will just stay home. Now, Sunak may be trying to persuade more of the ones who would otherwise stay home to hold their nose. Vote for him as being preferable to Labour. The problem is that Starmer's Labour isn't really all that offensive to inconsistent voters. Starmer's not like a bogeyman to very many voters at all. This is not to say Sunak's not going to win over many of these sleeping voters come the election. I absolutely expect a significant number to turn up and vote Tory, albeit begrudgingly. I just don't think that doubling down on existing pro-cruelty rhetoric is going to increase that number to any substantial margin. If he wants to attract more of those who would currently stay at home, he would do better to address their actual concerns, which are centred around the cost of living. So even taking all three of these types of voters together, it's not really clear how Sunak thinks he's going to attract more voters by more aggressively pushing the sort of rhetoric he has already been employing. He's already attacking the trans community. It's been well established it doesn't actually change voting behaviour one way or the other in the vast majority of cases. And that is because there are issues that people have an opinion on, and there are issues which decide their votes. Almost nobody, whether they are pro or anti-trans, is going to tick the box which most aligns with their trans views. So any bandwidth which Sunak uses to attack trans rights, which with its pointless cruelty, it's not going to gain him votes. It will just make people's lives worse for no gain to him. Crime's stronger ground. There are people who will decide their vote based on their perception of crime. But his current pitch is to pretend that fraud doesn't exist. Because whenever he and his ministers try to claim that crime has fallen, it is by excluding the single largest source of crime figures. But this isn't even a new tactic. They've been doing it for months. It hasn't been working. So Sunak's plan is to keep doing it, but more aggressively. All right, then. The third is migrant votes. Now, again, it has the potential to gain some votes for them, of course, but it's hard to see how adopting more aggressive rhetoric does that. Their rhetoric has already been aggressive, hateful in the case of some Tories. There are people who will use their vote on immigration issues, absolutely. Not as many as some might think. But how many of them are going to change that vote to Conservative based on more aggressive campaigning rather than results? I can't imagine very many. The situation the Tories find themselves in is not just of one looking like losing the election. See, what the by-election showed, again, in conjunction with the general polling, is that the swings away from the Conservatives are huge. Gaining a few voters here or there with their already failed culture wars is not going to help them. Like, if we had a proportional representation system, maybe it would gain them the odd extra MP. But we have a winner-takes-all first-past-the-post system. If you are looking at losing a seat by 4,000 votes and you do something to win back 1,000, you still lose the seat. It's really binary with our political system. You either win or lose. There are no shades of grey on a seat-by-seat basis. And what the vast majority of people want is for the government to address the cost of living crisis. And the problem with doubling down on the culture wars is it means taking away from the issues that is the issue for most voters, including Conservative voters, the ones they actually care about. See, every time Sunak talks about trans issues, he's not talking about mortgages. Every time Sunak talks about the boats, which keep coming, he isn't talking about the cost of living. This is why, for example, with Labour, and they present certain messages, and it's not always the messages other people would like them to present, it's because they have got limited bandwidth. They can only talk about so many policy areas. So they try to focus it. Well, the same is sort of true of the Conservatives. You know, if they're talking about one policy area, they're not talking about another. So what this strategy will do is leave Labour presenting their ideas on tackling the cost of living, the housing crisis, health and social care plans, which is what voters most care about. And what's more important, what they will most likely use their vote for. These are the ones that swing elections. Ordinarily, the way the campaign works is that each party tries to make a more attractive offer than the credible alternative on each of those key issues. But Sunak's plan here is to barely talk about those issues at all. So Labour don't even need to make their ideas sound all that good. Voters will just see that Labour have got plans and the Tories don't, because they're not talking about them. They're talking about something else. And I'm not saying that Sunak's strategy will fail because I don't see how it can work. It's the same strategy he's already employed. And look what happened. The Tories did worse than expected in the local elections. And although they retained Uxbridge against expectations, they still did worse than expected in the by-elections where there was no local wedge issue to play with. And I would argue they only retained Uxbridge because Labour are getting their pitch on ULEZ very wrong. But I'll discuss that more in the stream tonight. So as far as I'm concerned, what Sunak is doing here is as follows. He can't actually change anything he's doing because his current policies, they were never designed to appeal to the public, but to keep his MPs from open warfare. If he changes anything, he blows that tenuous balance within his party apart. But he also can't say he won't do anything to react to the results either, because people can see the party's heading in the wrong direction. So he has to say that he's going to do something different. So he announces that he's going to carry on doing the same thing, but presents it in a way that makes it sound like he's doing something different. But he's not. It's the same thing. More aggressive campaigning or not, it's the same thing, and it will fail the same as it always has. After all, who really thinks that on the issues of crime, immigration, trans issues, that the Conservatives have not been campaigning aggressively for the last year or so? But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.